It's rock and roll.
Welcome to the Look It's Rock and Roll podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill. Today I'm joined by Andy. Welcome.
Yo.
And Bill, which should make it pretty clear we're back to do another W.A.S.P chat. And where we had reached in the W.A.S.P discography, we're going to start off with, what was it? First Blood, Last Cuts, which was a compilation, what I thought at the time was going to be a career-ending compilation. The way it was spun didn't make it feel like it was being sold as a look back at the first chapter of W.A.S.P's history. It almost seemed like it was a bookend to W.A.S.P, period, since Chris had left the band, Crimson had done its thing and had kind of disappeared. And I remember I was back in the United Kingdom by then, living in Scotland, and I saw it in a record store and just bought the cassette because it had 2 new songs on it. And that really is kind of everything about it. There are some remixes of other songs and whatnot, but it came with 2 new songs, Sunset and Babylon and Rock and Roll to Death. And in terms of both of those new songs, I really dug Rock and Roll to Death. Didn't like Sunset and Babylon so much, or in that it, not that I didn't like it, it just didn't do much for me. It didn't blow me away, but I enjoyed what had been selected as the track list to represent the rest of kind of their history. So Andy, what were your thoughts on First Blood, Last Cuts?
Well, I was still, you just say still there, what I mean? Still around. I knew they were still around. I knew they're playing. I saw the Crimson Idol had came around, saw the tour and all that, so knew they were still around and stuff. So, this would be what? Yeah, their very first kind of greatest hits album, right? Would you call it? Because you had the first live Raw, but it's not really a thing. But when I got it, you always have that thing up and down. Are they going to mess with these CD at the time? Now we moved on to CDs. There wasn't even an album anymore. At that point, right? Albums were pretty much gone now, right? By then, 1990, what is it, 93?
Yeah, even in Europe, I don't remember seeing vinyl for it. That doesn't mean that there wasn't, but I only remember seeing the CD and not being able to afford the price point of that and ending up with the cassette.
And the cassettes, too. Yeah, they still had cassettes out, but the CD, and actually, it's kind of funny, just to show everybody. So for all, I know there's a ton of W.A.S.P fans. I'm on some of the W.A.S.P things, man, and some of those people, man, especially overseas, because they get a lot more than we even do here in the States. It's like reverse with them with W.A.S.P. And for the completists, there are actually 2 cassettes in a way. I mean, it's the same songs and stuff, but everybody likes those hype stickers. And by then too, they had that, the parental, the guidance, blah blah blah. It's going to say dirty words on it, whatever. You know what I mean? But then actually, they actually did another one, saying that basically the record company, it's hard to read, I am getting a little bit older, but, but it says like, Capitol Records will do anything to sell this CD. Stop the retail from if you wanted to buy this when you were that age, you're like, hey, I want to buy this. Oh, you can't buy this because you're underage. Wrong. Basically, Capitol's basically saying, screw you. They can't stop you from buying this. So that was pretty cool. So for the completists, there are actually 2 cassette tapes and 2 hype things on it. And then, of course, the CD, and the CD is actually really nice. They did he or Lucky, I guess, whoever's in company, they did a super huge, long, insert, and they actually represented everybody to the point that was in the band, which was pretty cool. You know what I mean? And that's the way it should be.
That's nice.
It's very long. It's kind of funny, and and it does it on both sides, and it's there's a couple extra more blacking on it, of course. But I mean, they do. They tell everything, and they go through the history and stuff like that. So, I know the W.A.S.P people out there like can't see this if they're not watching the podcast and just listening, but this thing's like 2 feet, 3 feet long on both sides, and so I think they did a really, really good job on it, and they even what did they put? Actually, I was just listening to the album before you guys came on. and they actually did a pretty good,
I
job on
remember
the
that.
CD.
Yep.
With the blood around, it's supposed to look like a little saw in a way with a little blood going around. So I thought, pretty cool. For as the remix stuff, you always get that weird kind of vibe about, oh my God, what is this going to sound like compared to the original stuff? Always you hear that little bit of dinner, but the first six songs actually are remixed. The first 6 or 5 are actually remixed. Animal, Love Machine, I Want to Be Somebody, On Your Knees. I forgot, I can't even see that. I Don't Need No Doctor. And then they go back to the Real Me, the Headless Children. Mean Man. They stick on track. They went back. They stick with the original thing. So, but I thought they were pretty good for remixes. It wasn't like, oh my God, this is really obvious. It's not like the Inside of Sonic Boom's the remix. The Kiss ones. It wasn't like that. But I really, like Julian said, I really love Rock and Roll to Death. Even though that song came out in '93, that song reminded me of like the '80s in a way. Just having a good time, long hair banging, having a couple of drinks and rock and roll to death. Or pass the bullets. You know what I mean? And we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Yeah, it was basically a new "I Want to Be Somebody," in terms of up tempo, good time rock and roll song, not filthy but sleazy enough.
Agreed. Perfect. And I don't know who played the actual guitar on that, but I know I had understood that Lita Ford did the other song. So Lita Ford, they did that video he did that video Babylon and song, but I'm pretty sure they had said it was Lita Ford at the time. She had done the solo, so I don't, the guitar. So I don't know if she did it for Rock and Roll to Death. Don't know.
Bill, when this came out in '93, I mean, you had to play catch up, I think, for Crimson. So were you kind of out of the picture by then with this collection? Do you have any thoughts on it?
I was definitely distracted. I was in my own band because I was 23 at the time. I was born in '70, and I was in a band, and it was a matter of, it was probably the most serious that I'd ever taken with a band. We were actually just like tunnel vision. We were writing, we were rehearsing 5 days a week, probably playing 1 to 2 gigs a month. And, actually at the end of '93, we ended up recording an album. And if you want to PM me, I can set you up with that. But I kind of had tunnel vision where, kind of like after the grunge thing started hitting, I just really just started focusing on my own music. And I don't really even recall this being released. And so, I mean, I was just basically immersed into my own band. And if there was a point I was listening to music, I was listening to practice tapes from the night before or something like that. So I spent like a year and a half of just being immersed in Freezer Burn. That was the name of the band. And I just kind of I probably looked at it and said, oh, it's a greatest hits thing. I got all this stuff. I didn't think about it being remixed. And my first son was born in October of '93, so I'm not exactly sure when this came out, but that put a huge, wrench on my frivolous spending, having kids showing up in the house and all that stuff. So I'll go ahead and say it now that I probably went 2.5 years without even buying a new CD. So buying a greatest hits package probably wasn't on the radar at all. I can remember like the first new CD that I got after that period was Carnival Souls. And so I was really, and I think I got it for Christmas from my brother. So I wasn't buying anything. If I was picking up something at a yard sale or something like that, I had a buddy of mine who, he gave me Greatest Kiss when it came out because it was an extra in his Columbia house or whatever. But I didn't buy anything. And I don't think that the 2 tracks were enough to encourage me to buy a greatest hits package, especially when I had everything up to that point. But now I got a question about Rock and Roll Death, because I have a digital copy of the album, and I'm not sure the title of it because I just kind of like put it on the Bluetooth speaker and just let it roll. And I know it's listed on All Music as Rock and Roll to Death. Is this the song that sounds like Johnny Be Good?
Yeah, as much as Kisses I Just Wanna sounds like Summertime Blues.
Okay, because I think it's listed on my digital track. It's listed as something different. It may just be Rock and Roll Death or something like
Oh
that.
no, it's certainly like an updated '50s, scorcher. So I mean,
And
if you think of Judas Priest doing Johnny Be Good, well, this is Blackie Lawless rewriting Johnny Be Good to a certain extent.
and that is, and I actually, when I went, we're going to get to the best and least favorites later. I'd actually written that down, but then I got listening to it today, and it's like, it's just these guys doing. I was into the '50s music growing up anyway, so I got listening to it more and more today, and it's like, why the hell did I write that down as a least favorite? But yeah, I mean that was the only track off of this is new too that I heard, and I just heard them, in the past 5 months. So, but it was a cool track.
Yeah. So that was First Blood, Last Cuts, and I kind of had checked out after that point. I wasn't following them. Being in the UK, Crimson had been bludgeoned to death. So they fell off my radar. I wasn't buying rock magazines. November '95, I got a job in a factory in Port Glasgow. Real fun, getting electrocuted every other computer on the assembly line. So it came as a shock when I went in to, I gotta check the name of this one because
It came as a shock because you were getting electrocuted every other computer.
yeah,
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
at 220 volts as well. So
I didn't think
so
about that.
so I used to drive down into Glasgow to go record hunting, and there were a bunch of record stores. There were the current ones, and there underneath Glasgow Central Station. It was always really cool. I always loved walking down under the station where I think there were like 8 tracks above your head, and there are stores, and it's very colorful. But you get down there to Oswald Street, and there was missing records or missing records or something like that. And it was one of the first record stores that I discovered in Glasgow when I moved there. And it was nearby to the markets, the Barras, where you could buy a lot of bootleg shit as well. So it was very convenient in terms of where you were location-wise. So I walk in there one day, and up on the wall is the picture disc for the black. I think it was Black Forever, and it's the bird off the cover shaped picture disc. The one behind me, I guess, would be a better one than trying to hold up the fricking CD with this technology blanking everything. And I was like, what the hell is that? It just grabbed my attention. Many things in my musical life have come as a result of just grabbing my attention, flipping through records in stores in Binghamton when I was 14 and just seeing the Angel cover. I'm like, oh, I'm buying that. Stuff like that's what has often led me to discover really cool music that's stayed with me to this day. And I took that down. I'm like, whoa, what's this? He said, oh, there's an album too, mate. I can't do a Scottish accent anymore. But he pointed me out to the CD, which had been released that fall, so it was still new in the UK. So I'm like, wow, a new W.A.S.P album. Cool cover. I'm like, I'm buying it. It's W.A.S.P. Even though they hadn't been on my radar and they'd fallen off my radar, I was excited that there was a new W.A.S.P album to buy, and I couldn't wait to get it home. I mean, I hadn't been that excited. I mean, I also found 5 Kiss singles that day, so it was a really good day in Glasgow for the what do they used to call me? English wanker or something like that. Andy, when did you find out about the album? Had W.A.S.P dropped off your radar in the States? Because I don't know what the music magazine scene was and how you kept up with stuff at that point.
Oh, we're going. We're going into the Still Black Enough.
Oh yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, let Bill talk for about 10 seconds. I'll be right back. Just you guys talk. I'll be right back.
That's good because I only got 10 seconds of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, so as you just said, you weren't buying CDs because you were buying diapers, and
Right.
a man's got to prioritize on what a man's got to prioritize. So your first interaction with Still Not Black Enough, was it for this show, or did you catch up with
Yes.
them years later?
Yeah, it was for this show because I love the band, and I, you know, love getting involved with the show, and I actually like the later stuff that I've heard, but still not Black Enough was just completely off my radar, totally. And I managed to. I'm glad that I got the download as cheap as I got it because I was looking at the record today, and the record, well, either the vinyl or the CD ranges between $150 and $600 to own this record. Those are Amazon prices. I was just totally blown away. It's like, good God, there's no way I'm going to go buy this record. But I mean, maybe if I can score a CD of it or something like that. But yeah, the vinyl. Did you go change your oil real quick or what?
Yep, that's the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was like, there was one Amazon ad that said $572 for the vinyl. I'm like, no way. And that's not that it's not a great album, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, it's just not a $500 great album.
No kidding.
Yeah,
I haven't
Andy.
found that record yet.
With Black Forever, baby. All right, I gotta have a little fun with this today. Go on, you gotta tell them about the video after, right, Jill? So, anyways, it was like they were on tour. Then the greatest hits came out, and then they like disappeared. And there's that thing with Blackie on overseas TV saying basically, W.A.S.P is done. They were all done. It was all over. But I never even saw that at the time, because back then, I mean, I don't even know again, we went to this. When did the net come out? When did the internet come out? When did YouTube come out? When did all this stuff come out? Even though it was a W.A.S.P band, they just like disappeared off the radar. They just basically, they disappeared, or Blackie disappeared and stuff. And then, actually one day I was over at another friend's house and he had the CD and he's playing, and I'm like, what the hell is that? I know Blackie's voice. And I'm like, what the hell is that? He goes, it's a new W.A.S.P CD. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a new W.A.S.P CD. I didn't hear nothing. I see nothing. And all of a sudden he goes, look, man, it's like an import. And I'm like, what? He goes, I went to this place called Jellies. This record. It's not even a record. It's all like DVD stuff. I mean, these people have zillions, millions of DVDs and CDs and stuff. And he picked it up there and said, man, look at this thing, man. And I'm like, look at it going, are you kidding me? When did this come out?
It was like, Andy, if you think about it, this almost mimics the way I found Crimson Idol, because I've got the English issue of it before the Capitol Records version came out. But go ahead.
I knew Crimson Idol was coming out because it was actually in newspaper, not newspaper, but like the magazines.
But this is almost the same thing. It just happened to you that, you had to get the import before you could get the U.S. copy.
But still not Black Enough. Didn't even have anything. There was no, and I never personally saw anything. I never saw anything on, if anything was on TV or a magazine.
Right.
It was just like, and technically I think it was supposed to be a Blackie Lawless solo album. And then supposedly there was an interview. Like I said, it was on an interview. He supposedly was supposed to be a Blackie Lawless, basically solo album. But the fans were sending them letters and complaining, oh, man, I can't believe you're going to quit. Yada, yada, you got to do it, you got to. And then they end up turning around and slapping the W.A.S.P, logo on and stuff. And, how far are we getting into it? I mean, it's like, it's almost like kind of like a Crimson Idol, the leftovers off of Crimson Idol, mixed in with some cover tunes, So that's how I found out. Another friend had it. He had bought it at a store. And he just, one day I was over there and he's like, hey, man, look at this. He starts playing. It's a W.A.S.P album. I'm like, look at that. I got the cover and going, is this really a W.A.S.P album? He goes to knew his voice and stuff like that. And then I was like, shit, I got to get a copy. But as Bill was saying, man, getting copies of stuff is ridiculous. The W.A.S.P stuff is just as expensive or more expensive than like buying Kiss stuff. I mean, CDs, they want, even like a Still Black Enough CD, they want like $50 and $60 and $70 for a CD. It's like, really?
And that's like, back to Crimson Idol. I think that I paid like $23 to $25 for that CD when CDs were just starting to come down, because when they first came out, they were like $18 a piece, but they were getting like under that $15 threshold. But to go buy an import, you were still paying to get it, get it across the pond. So you were paying $25, $30 for an import CD. And that's one thing that you had to, put in your budget. And there, like I had said before, there was no way that was going to happen with me at that point in time.
I mean, I look now here and just to, everybody does. I would imagine look at prices and stuff, man. They still want a fortune for still Black enough and anything really. The watch stuff is really, really expensive if you look at it. That's why I said I've been, go to like, flea markets, yard sales, whatever it is. I keep poke here and there. Man, I've gotten lucky. I keep posting them on my page. Man, been getting lucky here and there. Gone to some record shops. Oh my God, a record shop. That's even amazing itself. Finding record shops around. You might have to travel a little bit to go get there, but I've found about 3 or 4 W.A.S.P, 45s, like picture disc ones or just things. And I'm like, man, I'm going to grab them, man. They weren't even that expensive. But, trying to buy something off eBay or just in jail, forget it.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, man, no way.
Well, we put this on Facebook. I'll post that Amazon link to that $500 copy.
Nice.
What is it, $500 for the album?
For the LP on vinyl.
Wow. And
it's like $500.
Or somebody did a bootleg or like...
I doubt it. A lot of LPs have gone up in price to crazy money in Amazon.
Yeah, and that's the thing is with this was probably such a limited release. So, you have the limited release, plus you have maybe it was only as an import or something like that, and that just stacks it up higher.
Yeah. So first impressions, Andy, you kind of alluded to, your first impressions was it was leftovers from Crimson Idol. What were your first impressions? Did you go out and get it for yourself soon afterwards, or did you wait for it to be released in America, which was, I think, 10 months after it came out everywhere else in the world? It did get released here.
Well, I think, like I said, my friend, when he got it, I think he got it as the import when it was an import, And so I never got it because they only had 1 copy. So they had the copy and I couldn't find it anywhere. And this place would be the only place at the time that I probably could get it, but you never know if they were going to get it or not. So it was a crap shot and I never got it. And so it didn't get released here to the United States until, what was it, August? In August of 96.
August 96, nearly a year after it came out in Japan, and what was it, October 95 that it had come out in Europe. So that's a long time. But going back to when you did finally get a copy for yourself, what were your general first impressions of the album in general? How did you kind of gauge it as being worthy of the W.A.S.P name, or comparing it to Crimson Idol as you did?
It kind of sounds, some of the songs, it sounds like they're like stuff that didn't make it on the Crimson Idol. So, that's what I think. Some of the songs that didn't make it on the Crimson Idol, because you still had Bob playing guitar and you had Frankie playing the drums. So, like, to me, like kind of like Leftovers. That has that sound of kind of like Leftovers with, again, with some copies of hits. But then you find out there's 2 different versions of the CD or album, right?
3.
I noticed.
Actually, 4 if you include the pirate Russian issue that's got 15 tracks. And that's a good segue into a brief description of the albums. And the first version obviously is the Japanese, which had 11 tracks. Still Not Black Enough, Somebody to Love, obviously a Jefferson Airplane cover. Black Forever, Scared to Death, Goodbye America, Tie Your Mother Down, a Queen cover, Keep Holding On, Rock and Roll to Death, Breathe, I Can't, and No Way Out of Here. The European version, which I got, had 10 tracks because they wouldn't dare put a W.A.S.P cover of Queen on an album being released in the UK.
Bless their hearts.
Bless their little hearts. So that wasn't on there. The American version had 13 tracks, so for once America came out on top in terms of material. And you didn't get Breathe, you were lucky, but you did get One Tribe, Whole Lotta Rosie, and Skinwalker added to those. And then the 15 track pirate issue has Breathe on it, as well as the other B-side from a single, yeah, there were actually singles released in the UK for this. Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll. So he did 2 covers from AC/DC in '95 for this album. So that's basically your versions. And again, there were 2 versions of, I think it was Black Forever, Goodbye America, that were released as singles in the UK. One of them was a promo. Another one, I think, had just those 2 tracks. No, had Skinwalker and One Tribe, and then the other version of the CD single had the 2 AC/DC songs as the cover. So, jeez, that's a lot of stuff. And I didn't know. I had completely forgotten about A Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll. That's up on YouTube if you want to hear it. I did grab a copy of that today to throw in my folder with this file. That's nuts.
I don't really get it. You know, I know bands cover other bands. You know, Kiss has done it, and this has done it, and this beat's done it. It's okay if you do like maybe one on an album, but man, when you start doing 2, 3, 4, 5, you're like, no, sorry, no. That's my answer. I don't get it.
Well, yeah, 2 from the same band as well for one album cycle is a little bit excessive, and 2 AC/DC covers at that.
And he's so talented, Blackie's so talented of writing and all this stuff. You don't think they could he could have came up with something even cheesy.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move into Bill's first impression. Since Bill, your first impressions are the newest of all of us, so they're going to be fresh in your mind. What was your overall first impression on hearing "Still Not Black Enough" compared with everything else we've been revisiting out for these W.A.S.P podcasts?
Well, I was along with Andy on the first couple listens. It's like, okay, well, this sounds like Crimson Idol Leftovers, but there's actually one that sounded almost like a. I think it's No Way Out. No Way Out kind of sounded like a Headless Children Leftover. And the first, and that's the thing, is I had these $50 earbuds I bought off of some audiophile site, and that was the first time I listened to them with these. It's like, oh, this is going to sound primo. Blackie's guitar sucks on this album. It sounds like I've been messing, when we were in quarantine and all that stuff and I was laid off, I fooled around with, trying to record some of these quarantine tracks like people had been doing. And I had taken my guitar amp, and not to get too techie about it, I ran out of the preamp directly into my board. And it sounded exactly like Blackie's guitar tracks. There wasn't no oomph to the guitar. I mean, it just sounded like buzzy. And then when you got to the leads, you heard these crisp, clean Bob Kulick solos. Because if you guys remember back to Crimson Idol, I said that Bob's work didn't seem that definitive on that album. But man, when you think about, Bob's previous works and what he's done on this album, I think this is the quintessential Bob Kulick solo work. And when he's ripping, he is ripping some shit. I mean, it is killer stuff. But when you hear, when you're hearing Blackie, because it sounds like that is the guitar lick. And had they done a better production, just even amplifying, and granted, it is 1995. Speaker emulators are so much more now than they were then. But it just it didn't sound dreadful. It didn't sound like white noise or something like that. But you could tell it didn't really sound like a guitar either. It almost sounded kind of synthy. But, that was my first thing. Is like, okay, the guitars are terrible from Blackie's point of view. But then you've got Bob, Bob just puts the icing on the cake and smooths everything down. But then as far as like the drums went, and that's the one thing that's missing on this, I'm gonna hold off on the drums. But it seems like any bass action is really missing, because where you had with Crimson Idol and Headless Children, Johnny Rod was on fire. But it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of bass work. It's just kind of like being a second rhythm guitar, and there's nothing really definitive. And then now let's bring in the drums. I think that Frankie, and much respect to Frankie, he's a talented musician. I'm finding out more and more stuff that he played on, and it's brilliant work. And I appreciate everything he's ever done. May he rest in peace. I think that when he walked into the studio, he picked up the Keith Moon card, because everywhere there is a drum fill, there is a drum fill. I mean, it's just like every time that Blackie stops singing, it's it just seems like he's overfilling everything, and that it does give you a bit of a Who vibe to it, and which is great. But then it seemed like a little bit of overkill. I'd rather have Frankie sound like Frankie, which would be more like those first two Quiet Riot albums, or actually even the first three, and then or Headless Children, because I think that's the definitive Frankie Banali work. But it just seemed like he was really overplaying through everything. And the first few listens, I was kind of like, okay, well, this is all right. It's not dreadful, but it's okay. But I took a break. I come back and listen to it today, and it's like, this might be one of my top 3 favorite W.A.S.P albums. It's just that much of a change, because the songwriting is fantastic. And yeah, we'll get to the least favorites in a little bit, but yeah, I mean, it might be one of my top 3 favorites.
Yeah, thank you very much for mentioning that you thought this might be a quintessential Bob album, because for me, this is the quintessential Bob album. And that's, I think, something that I do like about Blackie's guitars being kind of a buzz, is that it sets a very consistent bed just for Bob to rip and fly. So I think the criticism of Blackie is a positive and a negative, and those guitars. And looking back, obviously Crimson took a while to catch up on for me. I prefer the sonics overall of this album to Crimson, which I find a little bit high on the trebly end. So I find some of those things that are criticisms, and are totally valid criticisms, to be what makes me enjoy it more in terms of listening. And you've also touched on the songwriting. In some cases, it's spectacular.
One thing I didn't follow up on is these very expensive earbuds I listened through. They're really kind of crap for listening to music. They don't have like a bottom end, and like if you get too much bottom end in them, they'll actually distort. So it really sounded atrocious the first time I was listening. I changed headphones, and it had something with a little more of a round sound to it, and playing it through the right speakers made all the difference. Yeah. But these things are exceptional for podcasting, but they're just kind of crap for listening to music. I'll let you go on.
All right, moving.
I mean, Bill's more the pro on this stuff on the music side, because I don't know squat, but I do agree with Bill on that part of it. Like, it doesn't have the punch to it in ways sometimes. I don't know. Maybe that's Bill is trying to say. It doesn't have that punch. You're right. You don't hear the bass as much. It doesn't. Yeah, it sounds like if you turn it up too much, it kind of gets distorted. I don't know. It's not even. It's probably, like Bill said, it's one of his top, but it made no way. I mean, Bob and Frankie do an awesome job. Bob is spectacular on the Crimson Idol. Some of those solos that he's done in the Crimson Idol are just unbelievable. But his work is really, really good. And I don't even think people realize that it's actually Bob Kulick and Frankie on the drums. Bob's doing the guitar and Frankie's Banali's on the drums. Man, I don't even think people even realize that. Maybe some people will see this podcast and say, "Really?" And they'll somehow get the CD or download it and check it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, Frankie, his drumming, I don't think that it's spectacular on this album. I never have. It's always been about Bob's guitar and Blackie's songwriting for me. If I want to listen to what I think is the quintessential Frankie Banali drumming, then it's Metal Health, because that was my first heavy metal album. in 1983, along with all the Lemmings, that helped drive that to be the first heavy metal #1 Billboard album. I was there. I was a part of that scene. I was one of those Duran Duran people who were moving over to the dark side of music at that time. That, to me, is the Frankie Banali drum album, but I also agree with you on Headless Children. So, Andy, back to you for, you first heard this 25 years ago. Basically, how has it aged for you over all those years? For me, it's one I listen to regularly and always have since getting it in 1995. So it's not one that has aged in any way. In some ways, it's timeless for me. What about for you?
I think I mentioned it's not in my top 5 at all. I do like some of the songs. Again, I do not like when bands cover other bands. Like one song is fine. They don't need to do it 3, 4, 5 times on one album. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. So in that way, but there are a couple of good songs on it, and I know there's a couple of songs that people like gotta go, ew, because they don't like the soft songs. But man, he can write pretty deep songs though. But it's definitely, I don't know, it's in the middle of the pack for me with the W.A.S.P albums. It's not up high and it's not the lowest, but it's somewhere in the middle for me, basically.
Did it rejuvenate you as a fan, though? You found out about this album just by happenstance, a friend having it. So did you get to the point that you then tried to stay more current? Did you get online and find out about the next album and kind of keep up a little bit more with what was going on in W.A.S.P land? Or W.A.S.P Nation, I guess.
Yeah. I'm trying to think back. That's kind of funny. You got to think back. When did you get the internet? You know what I mean? You got to think back. When did you get online? I know a lot of people would get online or have AOL. It was basically AOL, wasn't it?
It was. For me, I got online first in '93 with CompuServe, and then AOL came out.
Yeah. Well, I think I could.
All those free discs to install from. So, what do you remember about getting online, and what was the music that you were searching for back then?
Well, I think I was behind in the times, even though people had like the internet and stuff. I didn't really have that first. It sounds really bizarre to me now, but I wasn't interested in getting online, and I could get. The funniest thing is where I worked, I could get online and I could look at stuff online, say like at lunch or whatever. Stuff like that. But when I was home in the early years, I didn't have the internet when most people had the internet. When I finally got AOL, I was probably 2 years behind everybody else. Going, you got to get this thing called AOL and the CompuServe. And I'm like, why do I want to get online? I'm like, I don't know if I'm, it was very weird for me because I never really wanted to get online. And then finally, when I got online, it was AOL.
Bang, bang.
You have mail.
Look at all. They take forever to get online. You get online, you go to a couple websites. And I don't even think W.A.S.P even had any websites back then. W.A.S.P Nation technically wasn't around. There was. I don't even.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't surfing for W.A.S.P when I first got online. So, I mean, I was in it was all Kiss back then. And CompuServe, you were paying for every page that you looked at that point. So, let's move on from that into some of your favorite tracks. I asked each of you to pick 3 favorite and 3 least favorite. At least I know for a present, I will never buy Andy the 15-track version with all those covers on, because
check that one off the list.
Yeah, that's one we don't need to worry about. So, Bill, what were your 3 favorites from this?
I actually had "Goodbye America," which that gives me quite a bit of the Headless Children vibe. That was another one that it probably would have fit pretty well on Headless Children. And Black Forever. Black Forever might be the best single that W.A.S.P has ever released. It followed all the rules. It was hooky. It was under 3.5 minutes. And I actually I didn't see the video until today because you sent me a link. And even though it was a little too much of Blackie trying to act like Andy. It was it was a well done video, and it just didn't seem to fit the song. But then again, if you think what you're putting Black Forever up against like Lady Picture Show from the Stone Temple Pilots, I'm not even sure if that ever seen air on MTV. I know it's a VH1 video on the link, but it probably didn't see a lot of airspace to where people would get to see it. But then the one that I had, I Can't, as one of the favorites, and then I kind of scratched it, but I'll explain that when I get to my bad ones. And then I had penciled in Scared to Death, and Scared to Death might be it's probably one of the best composed songs. Yeah, great. It's not a great Wasp metal song, but it's so well composed with the background vocals going back and forth, and just really well put together. It almost gives you kind of a Jim Steinman kind of feel to it. It's not necessarily as long and wordy as a Steinman song, but it's written like one of his longer pop songs, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the least favorites now too.
We'll go around before we get to the least
Okay,
favorites,
that'll
but
work.
that video, I didn't see that until the YouTube era, and it's only probably in the last decade that I recall seeing it. So I mean, if you haven't seen it and you're like, whoa, there's a video, YouTube W.A.S.P.
Yeah, he looks great in it.
Black Forever.
He does an awesome job.
And it's a really good video, visually very artistic, and I think
Yes.
that's something that is overlooked with Blackie, that he's not just a saw blade codpiece wearing maniac. He's actually pretty deep, and that deepness was illustrated in the past week with Frankie Banali's death, because I don't know if either of you read Blackie's message about Frankie. And that just reads as the inspiration for a new concept album, touching on a lot of those emotions, and everything that he said in that message are just incredibly touching. So YouTube, W.A.S.P. Black Forever video, and you'll find it. We don't need a link for that. Andy, what are some of your favorites on that, and I guess your thoughts on the video as well, since you've obviously not been inspired by it in any way?
I have to agree. I never saw this video until way later. Maybe he made the video much later. The video is cool, but I don't like the video, but I do. I like the concept of it. I like how the whole black thing and the whole black paint and the whole black hair and it all good. But where's the rest of the band? Period. Again, here we go again. Man, you have Bob Kulick, you have Frankie. Did Blackie play bass on it, or did he have somebody else? Whoever. I don't care. Where's the rest of the band? I don't get this. I know, I understand. It's his thing now. It's his project, his W.A.S.P. thing. But the guys played on the album, man. They should have done the video with them all in black and stuff. Same concept, but they're all there. That's the only difference. Why can't they all be there?
Because I mean, imagine what I felt in the United Kingdom when I bought the album. It had more photos and stuff in it, and every single photo was just a Blackie. And I mean, even on the reissue, on the back cover, which you can't see, it's just Blackie. But so you should be happy that you just raved at the beginning of this when we're talking about First Blood, The Last Cuts, about the great spread that shocked you, that had all these pictures. That's where the band is. He blew he's not putting anyone else in his packaging again. He did it all for that album, with the exception of Rick Fox, of course.
So Rick Fox.
So that's the only issue I have with the video, and and I like the video. I like the black, the whole blackness and stuff. And by then, right? It's 93. We're in the middle of the 96. We're in the middle of what kind of music we're in the middle of? Nothing. Too, right? 96. The grunge is
Weezer.
Full is it
Foo
still kind of there? Is it, no, whatever. So basically, but yeah, I know. But so grunge was already starting to fall in '96, and then of course the Kiss reunion happened. So who else was in '96 that was started to either make a comeback or was huge at the time. You just said the Foo Fighters. Were they? I mean, what else was happening? Nothing really, right? At the time. So I don't know.
Rage Against the Machine.
Ooh, Jesus. Okay, not get really bad. Okay, yeah, I guess it started being that kind of metal that hated cops, right? That was that was that kind of generation.
What was STP? Were they earlier? Because I never followed.
Yeah,
them.
they were still pretty active in '96.
Yeah. So okay. So,
they were actually just starting to fall apart, to be honest. I think it was '98 or '99 was their last record before the split. Because they did the first three and then they took a break and they came back with the fourth one.
So at least I could say this thing for Blackie. At least he didn't follow the trend, right? He didn't follow the trends. He didn't go for grunge kind of thing. He did his own thing, right? Which he's been doing for a while now. His own thing. It seems like he just doesn't care what people think. He's going to do his own thing. So you got to give him props for that. But so you wanted the top three.
Yep,
this is kind of hard.
Your top three today. You know it's going to change the next time you listen.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's tough, depending on your mood and how you are. But I got to say, Still Not Black Enough is up there. Just like he did Goodbye America, but still was. I guess you can't count Rock and Roll to Death because Rock and Roll to Death technically was on the greatest hits. I don't know.
Count it.
I do. You're gonna like. I do. It's like I do. Yeah, Julian didn't like it. I already know. He said that song "Breathe." It's actually. Actually, I had to play it at my wedding too. So I actually got. He can write. I know they're more of a metal band, but he can write really good ballads too. He's got some killer ballads. So "Breathe" is really good ballad, and I don't know. It's like I said, this one's a really tough one for the up and down. Really, like you said, today I like something way better than I like it tomorrow. So this album is kind of tough on me.
Yeah, and you know what? Since you played "Breathe" at your wedding, I won't say anything further about that song, other than I do like it more than "Keep Holding On." No, I'm not going to diss your wedding ever. That would not be right. Mine are easy. "Goodbye America," Black Forever. I mean, they were the single. They in the UK, they're also really, really good songs. And, Bill touched on kind of them being the best single and kind of reminiscent of that earlier rocking W.A.S.P. Picking a third one is really difficult. Could easily go Still Not Black Enough. But I think on my last listen that I completed right before coming on here, I Can't was jumping out at me as being a little bit of a different creature on this. I'm not into the covers. I guess we can at the end of this talk about our favorite cover off this album. Just to annoy Andy, we'll do that. That'll be the last question. All right, least favorite 3 off the album, Bill.
Okay, I lost my video for a minute. I mean, you guys can probably see me, but I can't see you.
Then you're lucky.
Okay, now it's coming back on. My TV sat, because I got hooked up to a TV and it sat so long, it just decided to shut off. So that's great. The least favorite, and I'm going to apologize for this one up front. I did have Rock and Roll to Death because I wrote that down before I listened to it like 3 times a day, and I actually titled it "Blackie Be Good." Ironically enough, the 2 of the 3 that I don't like off the album are extra tracks on those other versions. One being One Tribe, and the other one being Skinwalker. But then I managed to scribble out "I Can't" twice because I put it on my favorite list and then scribbled it out because I said, man, that middle part where I don't like the part where it gets heavy. If that's the 50-year-old man in me talking, so what? But it's a great ballad, and then it has that heavy part, and then it goes back to being a gentle ballad again. And it's kind of like, well, that's, pardon the expression, it's just kind of dumb. It's like Andy said, he writes great ballads. Just make it a good, complete ballad. If that would have had a tasty Kulick's acoustic guitar solo in it instead of going heavy in that spot and then finishing the song off, it would have been perfect. But that one part where it goes heavy in the middle of it, that actually got it bumped onto my least favorite list for a while. But that's all I had. So really, I don't have a least favorite. Well, now that I mention it, you had mentioned the ones that you weren't going to pick for your favorites, Julian, and those two would probably be. It's not Breathe, but the other two you mentioned. Here, I got my track listing here. I can
Yeah,
pull
Still
it.
Not Black Enough, and
Keep holding on.
Yeah, Keep Holding On. I wasn't very thrilled with.
That's a really
And,
deep, a really deep song for, you know.
that's
Oof.
like really, I have like a top 6, and then there's like 3 of them that are kind of not bad. Not to quote somebody else, but yeah, it's just and I actually took all the covers out of the equation, and I'll go ahead and throw that out now because I'm not really keen on any of the covers. I think The Real Me is one of the top covers that they did, and we'll get to one of the other better covers that they most recently did on another episode, I hope. But as far as I did the little greater than sign at the bottom of here, and Somebody to Love is greater than Whole Lot of Rosie, but Whole Lot of Rosie is greater than Tie Your Mother Down. I didn't know about Long Way to the Top when I did that list, so
it's at the
somewhat
bottom.
okay. It's worse than Tie Your Mother Down because the thing with Tie Your Mother Down that got me is Bob actually produced a Queen tribute CD, and I'm pretty sure that Yngwie Malmsteen played on Tie Your Mother Down, and he soloed through the whole damn song. And Bob did the exact same thing on this version, and it's just kind of like, there's a rhythm to the verses, there's a melody to the verses. Let the singer sing. You're going to get a solo. You don't have to riff, rip through the whole song. But that's what turned me off with that one. And the same thing went for the Lynch Mob version of that. So, but yeah, that's where I was at with my least favorite. But I did put down that No Way Out is a quintessential W.A.S.P song, and Bob is killing on it because it sounds like No Way Out could be the bridge between Last Command and Headless Children. Oh no, wait, there was an Electric Circus in the middle, wasn't there? Yeah, it could have been, it could have been a good song on Electric Circuits. It was a great song. So I really don't have any least favorites other than, I guess I do have 2 least favorites, but Breathe is not one of them. It's the other one.
Keep holding on.
Keep Holding On. Yeah, that's probably my least favorite. But all the rest of them I can kind of deal with. I think Breathe could have been done a little better if they would, I think that's one. Frankie plays a pretty good solid drum part in that, doesn't he? In Breathe. Yeah, I think if he would have because I think he's doing a lot of kick drum in that. That was the one that's like, well, if he would have eased up on the kick drum and just did like a boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, like that, it would have been better. But it sounded like he was almost hitting he was hitting the kick drum on almost every beat. But I don't know who's next.
We're going back to Andy for, what is your favorite of the covers on here, or least favorite? You got 4 to choose from, don't you? What? Somebody to Love, Tie Your Mother Down.
I'll just take the
and the 2 AC/DC songs.
No, I'll take the first one.
You got a Whole Lot of Blackie. You got It's a Long Way to Blackie if you want to rock and roll, and Tie Your Blackie Down, and Some Blackie to Love. So
a whole lot of Blackie.
Somebody, yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Somebody to Love, I thought was a fantastic cover version. Tie Your Mother Down didn't do a thing for me, but it wasn't on my album originally, so I was fortunately blessed not to have to suffer through that. I was looking at my album today, I'm like, oh god, it's the American one. Where did that come from? No idea where my original one. I guess it was still in storage in Scotland. If they ever look in the attic, they might find all my stuff up there, which up yours. Okay, let's move on to the last couple of questions about this. Sorry, Andy.
my least favorite, as right now, I should say right now, but my least favorite actually of the songs, forget, they're all the covers out, but my least favorite of the real songs I call is that I Can't. I do not like that song at all. Because when you read the words, I never had a bad relationship with my mother. So I can't breathe. I can't F. My mother hates me. Blah, blah, blah. Wrong. See ya. That's, that's.
I can understand your point of view on that, and that's one advantage that you had over me is I didn't get to read the lyrics. So I did get to hear that. Those are pretty clear. I can't breathe. I can't, and all of that. But that's I guess I kind of threw some of the lyrical content out. I kind of went more on the music and the melody. But I understand.
Yeah. My mother hates me. She never loved me. Okay, I'm out. That's I know some people who've gone through bad, like girlfriend boyfriend relationships, husband and wives, but mothers and fathers. But I've had a good relationship with my parents. So, and what he says about my mother never loved me, hated me. I'm gone. That's it. Done. Out. So for me,
whereas I take it the other way. I don't think he's actually singing those things. I think he's singing out about someone who's tormented and doesn't feel any of that, even though it's a complete contradiction. I take it in a very psychological way, but a bit like Morrison.
Well, and it would also fall into the Crimson Idol storyline.
But it's not in the storyline.
But it's not a happy. Let's put it this way: it is not a song I get all giddy about and start singing along to. Nope, I'm with you on that. I'm not singing those lyrics ever.
Yeah.
Whether it's Jim Morrison-esque or whatever, I'm not singing that ever. So.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my take on it too, Julian. If you look at it that way, so that's how I get. Yeah, so that's how I kind of look at it that way too. Between those specific lines and that, I don't know. That's just kind of weird, especially when we get to the next album.
Yeah, which we're getting to the end of this discussion about Still Not Black Enough. What could have been better on this album for you, Bill? I'll start with you on this, just as the most recent. You've already said a lot of the things that you kind of don't like and what you change, but just summarize it for that question specifically.
And I'm glad you went to that because it actually just ties back to something that Andy, what Andy didn't like about I Can't. But first of all, better guitar sound. I understand differentiating between Blackie's guitar and Bob's guitar, but Blackie's guitar, it almost sounded a little too industrial. And that's what was going on. Industrial music was getting heavy in 95, 96. That's what kind of took off after grunge, now that we were asking that earlier. But the one thing it could have done better is if Blackie had somebody to tell him to rein it in. Because he made a great album with Spencer Proffer, being Last Command, and didn't he have production assistants on Headless Children? I think Spencer Proffer was on that one too. But I mean, having a good producer to just say, wait a second, dial this back. You don't need, and that's the thing, like the lines that Andy was referring to about his mother, and I Can't. He has 2 lines about his mother out of 3 lines. Because he says something about his mother, then he says something else, and then he says something else about his mother, like within 3 or 4 lines. It's just too close together. If they'd spread it apart, it may not have been so much of a poke in the eye or whatever. But just having, he needs some constructive criticism to help dial things in. And then he can still make great records. I mean, this record could have been better if he'd had some production assistance.
Yeah, and Last Command was the last album he had any production assistance on. Everything else was pretty much all him afterwards. So that kind of says a lot. So I mean, the buck stops with Blackie for W.A.S.P. He is W.A.S.P. after, basically 1985. So Andy, for you.
I gotta agree with Bill on that, on the sound. I don't know. It doesn't have that. It's missing even the drums. You can hear the drums, you hear the guitar, but it's almost like it's not like turned up enough. I don't know. Does that sound right? Sound weird to me? I don't know.
The guitar is quite out front. Blackie's guitar is, at least. I mean,
Well,
it's actually out. You don't hear any bass.
And the bass is totally, like I said, totally missing. So, and me again, well, there's 4 different versions of the album. It's like, that's another thing that should have been, I mean, yeah, I get it. It's to help sell more of the album, but you got 4 different versions.
Yeah, I actually had that down too, a consistent track listing. Of course, give Japan their bonus tracks. They want their bonus track, give them a bonus track.
Yeah, they could have
But
Breathe.
Worldwide, it could have been the exact same the rest of the way through.
Or just give us all 15, all the way across, whatever it was. Who cares?
No, I mean, when you do 4 covers, it makes more sense to make that an EP. So you do your primary single. So for Japan, there could have been the Still Not Black Enough EP, Black Forever, Goodbye America, the 4 covers and 1 B-side, one demo version from that, and then boom, there you go. And save them for singles. That's where they belong. On the B-sides of singles, not on the album proper, other than 1 cover, and I totally agree with that. The production, again, I think that's the one thing that does kind of stand out on this album. What I find it missing, even though I do like the overall sonics, are that there is not enough separation between the instruments. I would like the drums to be better layered. I would like them a little more boomy, and crisp. The guitars, that's the fair criticism of those. I think Bob's perfect. Bob is perfect across the board. Every other element could be produced a bit better in terms of just overall product. Or maybe that's just, dated sound for my ears deteriorating over the years. I don't think it matters. And, when you talk about production, and what you like, was it a good production? It's a very, very subjective thing. Everyone has their own taste of what they like to hear and how they like to hear things and how their brain processes what they're hearing. So apart from the fact of if it's like an 87th generation bootleg cassette that sounds like dog vomit, it usually is a pointless discussion.
Wait. Julian, what exactly does dog vomit sound like?
Miley Cyrus?
Okay, point taken.
or whatever that WAP song is that's popular at the moment.
Okay.
Does that cover it for you? I mean...
So, my other thing is, too, they never toured. That's the other thing. They never toured that album, or even the last Blood. I mean, I saw them the last time I saw them actually live was in '92.
Right.
From '92 to basically 1997, I never saw W.A.S.P live, and they didn't even play live that I know of. I mean, they never played. I don't think they played. Still Black Enough for the greatest hits overseas. They never toured. I don't think he ever toured in those years.
Well, then
that's the thing is
you didn't miss anything.
Overseas, he could book 5 dates and could call it a world tour. But I mean, it's not like he's going to go coast to coast in the United States when he knows he can't sell out an arena.
Yeah, but still,
or even a medium-sized club.
Yeah, but that's the other thing that killed him. He didn't tour from that. The last thing he did was Crimson Idol.
Yeah, that comes back to the problem of Blackie Lawless. It was W.A.S.P. So you have to pay your drummer. When you go on the road, the guy who's keeping the beat likes to get paid. The guy who's playing the bass likes to get paid. Your other guitarists like to get paid. Oh, and then there's all those useful people who actually bring all your stuff and set it up and make you sound good and do your lights. You can't just rely on house to do everything or to even have the right stuff. So the costs, even for low-level touring, are absolutely horrendous and in many cases prohibitive. Yeah, there are little bands that can get in a truck or a van and do it. But not when you've played arenas. It becomes more difficult, I think, especially mentally, to be able to do that. And just look at what happened with bands like Union, when you had Karabi and Bruce Kulick going back on the road and back into playing for 100 people in a club. It did not last.
Yeah, but it would have been so cool to see Bob and Frankie and Blackie and
on David Letterman, or one of those late night Access Channel shows. Yeah, to have seen that lineup actually do some of this material would have been absolutely fantastic. Or Who knows if there's any vault video of them actually tracking any of this stuff, or whether it was Blackie did most of it on his own and then brought them in. Again, that whole era is one that kind of fascinates me, because this is kind of like the final step before the precipice of the next album that we're going to be discussing, KFD. Ooh, which in itself is a really kind of interesting thing, and everything that led up to that one. For me, this was kind of the last traditional W.A.S.P album before that that kind of interruption in some ways.
Well, I have to say, I know we're going to talk about it the next podcast, but I love the interruption. I don't know. We'll get there when we get to that album.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's leave that there for still not Blackie enough, because it certainly was. I think it's a great album. Go and check it out. The whole thing's on YouTube. And while you may not be able to afford the $597 LP version on Amazon, you can get it on Discogs, the CD for the music if you want physical product. You can listen to most of the tracks on YouTube for free, and probably Spotify. I didn't check. So chime in wherever you listen to this on what were your favorites on it. What do you think of the production? Did you use your podcasting headphones to listen, or did you use real headphones, audiophile? While sipping your absinthe. Did you smear yourself down with mud to listen to it?
No, actually, too, there's actually a couple more. There's some more videos out there. They're not official videos, but there's a couple more videos that people made up with this album. They keep holding on to me. I know it wasn't like guys' favorites, but somebody actually did a nice videos for that. And Breathe, they did some nice videos. I mean, there's some people got some serious good talent. So there's some videos that actually show the words and the meaning behind it. But again, I wish they had done more. It's not like I don't think we wanted to be there. They just weren't. He wasn't there.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, here it is. I'm just gonna go back to my home and do my, my farming and my cattle or whatever he does, wherever he is out in wherever he is in Arizona, wherever he's living. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Well, there you go. The whole idea of doing these conversations about albums is this is a bit of a lost gem in the W.A.S.P catalog, that maybe people who've lost touch with the band and listened to them in the 80s will have a chance to revisit, because we've gotten together to talk about an album today. So let's leave that all there before the dog vomit comes out. You don't want the sounds of that at the end. So for now, from Bill, from Andy, and myself, thanks for joining us on the W.A.S.P chat on the Look It's Rock and Roll podcast. Take care.
Bye, buddy.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, like us, or even leave us a review. You can find us and join the conversation on Facebook.